Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by my man, Audley Stevenson, the Odd Man.
Greetings and salutations. Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, coming to you live from the beautiful shores of Cozumel, Mexico. I'm totally thrilled to be here, soaking in the sun and the vibrant energy of this incredible locale. And I'm equally thrilled and excited to share the insights that will help you live your best audacious life ever. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to join me. Now, in today's fast-paced world, high achievers often find themselves in a relentless pursuit of success, much like navigating through the vast, unpredictable waters surrounding this island paradise. Just as a skilled sailor must manage the winds and currents, we must learn to manage our stress and well-being. The dangers of burnout loom large, and it's too easy to overlook the signs, like neglecting personal well-being or feeling overwhelmed by competing demands. Today's guest is Erin Harrington, the founder of Soul Values and the author of the Whole Life Planner. Erin brings a wealth of knowledge and personal experience to the table, having faced her own battles with burnout. She specializes in helping busy, overwhelmed high achievers, reaching them and teaching them how to effectively regulate their stress response. Erin shares daily practices and promotes stress regulation, such as celebrating small wins and consciously avoiding distractions, and she has so much to offer. And so without any further ado, let's turn to our chat with Erin. Enjoy. Hey, Erin, thank you for joining me here today on the Audacious Living Podcast. I appreciate you making the time to be here, so thank you.
Thank you. I'm so grateful to be here with you today. I appreciate it.
Well, I get excited about these conversations because it really has an opportunity to help individuals in various aspects of our lives, and just the art of conversation. You and I are talking, and someone's listening to something, and if they can take something away to help them and make themselves, transcend or put their life on a better path, that's really exciting for me. And so I do appreciate the opportunity to engage in these types of dialogues. Here on this podcast, we encourage, this best audacious life that we talk about, and everyone's on their own individual path, their own individual challenges, their own individual pitfalls, if you will. And the constant encouragement of that audacious is to sort of get through those challenges, because we truly believe that on the other side is where all the greatness lies. And so it's just a matter of getting there and pushing through and persevering. Where you come and you attack this from the perspective of managing stress, right? And stress is something that's it's part of our lives, and it exists, and it's really coming down to the word I'm using. I think the word managing will come up an awful lot in this conversation, but about how we choose to manage it. So maybe as a starting point, I'll get you an opportunity to introduce yourself to the audience and talk a little about your work and what's got you to the point that you're at now.
Well, thank you. So my name is Erin Harrington. I'm the founder of Soul Values and the author of the Whole Life Planner, an integrated toolkit for purpose, productivity, and peace. Mm-hmm. I help busy, overwhelmed, high-achieving entrepreneurs learn how to not just regulate stress, but regulate the science behind stress, regulate their stress response so that they can think more clearly, make better decisions, and create more time for what matters most without losing themselves to work. So effectively, I'm sort of in the work-life balance space, but I'm also in the productivity space. And, what I have learned from my own experience with two major burnouts is that, high achievers, which I relate to, they often feel the pressure to excel at everything that they do.
Right.
And ambition can drive success, but it can also trap our brain in a cycle of the stress response, which diminishes our clarity, our effectiveness, and our ease. Like distinctly affects those things on a daily basis. And so in my two major burnouts, one at the height of my career and another during sort of a long-term health crisis due to some disabilities that I experienced, I learned how to manage my stress response, which taught me that regulating this is really a fast track to building resilience, increasing harmony, and achieving sustainable success. So, what I did with my own brain with regard to basically healing myself, right? Getting
Mhm.
myself out of a really bad mess, I found out that this same sort of set of techniques can help people who don't have the same type of disabilities and health challenges that I experience. And so, I work with my clients on how to understanding just sort of how to understand at a very basic level how certain techniques on a daily basis that take just a few minutes a day
Mhm.
can set up your brain to achieve more and stress less. So you feel better and you're getting that effectiveness across work and life.
Right, right, right. Well, I certainly appreciate the sort of sharing a piece of your journey because I think that helps inform the work that you do and how you're able to help the clients that you work with. So that's fabulous. I want to ask about you mentioned the two burnouts that you'd gone through, and sort of in the general sense. Is there any way of knowing that you're on that path to burnout? What does that? Is there any indications that people go, "Oh, wait a second, I feel this coming," or this may like anything at all?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different signs. One of them is not thinking that you don't have time for things that matter. Like, I don't have time to exercise. I don't have time to eat this nice meal. I don't have time for date night, kids events, meditate, whatever your special thing is, because we all have different goals and desires and things that we connect with on a personal level.
Mm-hmm.
If you're saying, I don't have time for that consistently, and there are things that matter for you, that's a surefire sign that you're on the way to burnout, if not already there. I think also that sense of spinning, right? That sense
Okay.
of overwhelm, that spinning, inability to sort of follow through and complete things. Those are signals that you're on the way to burnout because when you're in that stress response, right? Which
Mm-hmm.
is again, our stress response is this beautiful system that our brains develop to protect us in case of real survival threat, not
Right.
day to day. Oh my gosh, I got this email and I have to respond to it, or any number of fires that you're putting out on a daily basis. So when when you're feeling a little bit of confusion, you're feeling like your decisions are harder to make,
Mm-hmm.
those are good examples of when you're in that stress response and you're sort of stuck in that stress response and more likely to experience burnout. Um, at a really high level, I think high achieving entrepreneurs in general often struggle because they tend to push through stress. They tend to which keeps their brain in that survival mode. They keep thinking, if I only get this thing done, if I only do this,
Right.
then I can relax after that. They oftentimes feel overwhelmed by competing demands,
Mm-hmm.
which is common, right? In general, trying to manage demands of work and life, but super overwhelmed is a big sign of burnout. And compartmentalizing work and life.
Mm-hmm.
Again, those are competing priorities. So you're more likely to head towards burnout if you're doing that. And then lastly, I think another signal, because again, my target audience or the people that I like to speak most to are these high achievers, people
Right.
who strive for perfection in whatever that they do.
Right.
And that can oftentimes lead to sacrificing well-being and time for what you love. So if you're experiencing any of those symptoms,
Yep.
let's call them,
Mm-hmm.
your a burnout is a real risk for you. It's a risk for all of us. So there's different actions that we can take to avoid that.
Tell me for those that even haven't experienced burnouts, so we're talking about burnouts here. How bad does it get, or what does that look like in terms of the severity?
Well, I can speak from my own burnout. The first
Mhm.
burnout that I have, I was extremely successful. I was the top sales leader for a startup in affiliate marketing, right? So we brought affiliate marketing around the millennium to market. And I was their top sales achiever. We were going for our IPO. We had already completed, 3 rounds of funding. I had hit all the big named accounts. I was bringing in mad amounts of revenue. Things were
Mhm.
incredibly successful for
Life
me.
was good.
It was great. And I was living the dream, right? And by all standards, I lived in the Bay Area, which at the time was an incredible place to live. I lived right in San Francisco. And what happened was I I didn't have children yet. I was just about to get married. I didn't have time anymore to do the cultural things that mattered for me. I wasn't cooking, which is something that mattered to me. I
Mhm.
stopped gardening. I didn't even really have a whole lot of time for self-care types of things, which were always important to me, even going and getting, chiropractic, acupuncture, massage. I started to wean those out, and I wasn't doing the things that I loved with regards to like hiking, getting outdoors. I basically just was working 80
Right.
hours a week
Right.
and experiencing profound pain. The pain that I had was sort of next level.
Mhm.
And so for me, burnout can lead to, like I said, it can lead to pain. It can lead to relationships breaking down, which they did for me.
Yes.
And it can also lead to career, or if you're, an entrepreneur, it can lead to a total breakdown of that. I ended up having to retire from my job
Mm.
um, intentionally. I retired from it intentionally because it wasn't sustainable for me any longer. But had I not burned out, had I been taking those actions more consistently, then I know what I'd be doing right now. I'd be leading multiple companies. I would be, a serial CEO. That was kind of the path that I was on.
Right. Right.
Um, and I don't think it's important to say, oh, I wish I did, because I love the path that I'm on. I love what I've
Mhm.
learned and all the
Yep.
messes that I experienced and what it brought me to. And then, with my second burnout, it was similar, but this was very driven by medical concerns. Like they
Mhm.
didn't know exactly what was wrong with me. And then some of the diagnoses that came in were, well, life-threatening, right? They were pretty serious. I had two young children by my side, and fear and again, overwhelm kind of just took over. They were in the driving seat, which led me to just have like blinders on,
Mhm.
right? And I think
Mhm.
that's what happened the first time around. I was super focused on work and no time for anything else. With my second burnout, I was super focused on my health, but I
Mhm.
wasn't doing it in a positive way. I was terrified. I was basically keeping my brain stuck in that stress response so that I couldn't do anything that was beneficial for me,
Gotcha. Gotcha.
right? I think if you feel a lot of darkness,
Mhm.
right? If you feel overwhelmed, if you feel like you can't take time for the things that matter,
Yep.
let's just say pick the top things that matter to you in life. That's what I do with my clients, right? What are the
Mm.
top 3 values that truly matter? And if you're not finding time for some of those values, that's a pretty good sign that you're at risk of burnout.
Right. How does that show up physically in our bodies?
It can show up in so many different ways. Physical pain, right? Like the first burnout that I experienced, I had severe back pain,
Mm.
like really over the top, limiting back pain. It can also show up as confusion, disorientation. In fact, being in your stress response affects your vision, it affects your hearing. So again, think about this survival mode was designed so that if a tiger was attacking us, we could
Right.
run,
Right.
right? So our heart races, we sweat, and oh, we need to get out of there fast, not necessarily get to the next meeting and also organize some family things and personal relationships and things like that. Those are completely different stressors that don't need to necessarily trigger the stress response, that
Right.
survival mode, but they oftentimes do just because of the world that we live in.
One of the things that and maybe it's a myth, maybe we can help break this down. But for a long time, I've always felt that when you're doing the things that you love and you enjoy and it gives you energy and gives you passion, that you can do them forever. Uh, but you also can experience stress in those things that you love too, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a really good question, of course. But I think of it as function. It depends,
Okay.
right? I'm going to put a big, large depends
Okay. Yeah.
on that particular question because if you're doing it effectively, then it is beneficial to your overall system. It's
Right.
improving your focus. It's helping regulate your stress so that your heart rate drops down, your blood pressure drops back down, you're thinking more clearly, you're making
Mhm.
better decisions.
Right.
However, however, if you kind of add that perfectionistic
Uh,
load, right, to it. Like let's say you're a jewelry maker or one of your habits is that you're a
Podcasting.
marathoner. Maybe you're training as a
Right.
marathoner or
Right.
something like this.
Right.
Of if you train the way that your body needs to train, that's great, right? But if you judge yourself in that process, that's not great. In other words, let's say your body needs to have a rest day. Um, Sooner, because marathoners always they run a certain number of days and then they take rest days. Let's say your body's like, I need a break today. Today needs to be a rest day. Actually saying no to that can be detrimental to your well-being on a lot of different levels, right? So it's kind of like um, as long as perfectionistic behaviors or perfectionistic sort of styles of thinking don't put you to the opposite end of that, then you're more likely to be successful. Did that make
No,
was
it does. I think, and that the I mean, chasing perfection, as we know, will always be a challenge for us, right? It'll always, um, in some instances, even be our downfall if you're not careful. And so, uh, it was more. So I think what you did is you that distinction in terms of, well, this can be a good thing. So yes, doing the thing that you love can be a good thing, but here's where you need to be mindful if it's overboard, and that
right,
chasing perfection piece could potentially be the difference maker.
right. Yeah, so where I actually learned about the stress response in a very distinct way from a neurologist, actually, or I learned about it in a way that caused me to want to help others understand it. And that began in 2010, right? I had been diagnosed with a number of other conditions affecting my whole body, my brain, my heart, my muscles, my mitochondria, everything. Some
Right.
pretty big conditions. And I had a neurologist who I would see for this thing called dysautonomia, which is also known as autonomic nervous system dysregulation, right? So for me, I have a neurological condition that puts my brain in that stress response sort of more often and can be super detrimental to my well-being, right? So I actually going back to this neurologist, I would see this neurologist every 6 months, and she would start every appointment with, Erin, how's your stress level? That was the
Mm,
first question. The second question was, how are your symptoms? And after this happened, like a number of cycles, right? I was like, I thought that she just really liked me, which she was super friendly with me. But
Right.
finally, I said to her, Dr. Holer, you ask me this every single time. What's up with that? There's got to be
Hmm.
a reason. And she said, well, that's because your stress response directly tells me, right? When you tell me how your stress level is aligned with your symptoms, that tells me exactly how your autonomic nervous system is
Oh,
basically managing your symptoms, right? And so from that, I imparted that I could affect my nervous system and just by managing some of these stressors. And so I set out on a path to do that. I mean, I've always been sort of on a spiritual
right.
and transformational growth path. It's been my thing since I was a teenager. But when I learned that I could consciously shift my own experience from this really big disabled state, I mean, I was mostly bedbound, to be very honest with you. I set out to do that and it changed my life. I mean, I still have significant issues, right?
Sure, sure, sure.
But not like I had previously. And in that process, I mean, the joy that I have, the smile that I
Mhm.
have, the happiness that I have, in spite of these experiences, largely has to do with these brain hacks, these simple hacks that I've developed
Mhm.
alongside learning from science itself,
Sure, sure.
to basically just shift your own experience.
So that led to the development. I think we're leading nicely into the stress less blueprint. Can we sort of talk about that and how it's helping people manage stress?
Sure. So the stressless blueprint is literally just the system behind my daily pages. My daily pages are within my book. There's 90. It's a quarterly book, right? It's front loaded with a set of worksheets, goal setting, sort of life assessments and things like that. And then there's the daily pages, which are the meat of regulating your stress response, retraining your brain for daily success
Hmm.
despite your obstacles, right? And so there's 10 prompts on those daily pages that are specifically designed to get your brain into that parasympathetic, also known as relaxation response, also I love that it's also called executive response because when
Okay.
you're in that state,
Right.
you think super clearly, right? So these 10 prompts are things like, daily affirmation, gratitude, but also identifying reaffirming your daily goal, your quarterly goal. But there's other little hacks in there that are really unique that are not in a lot of other planners. And what's unique about them is that they look at the big picture. I'm a big picture thinker. That's just how I
Sure, sure,
am,
sure.
right? And so, for example, distractions are something that as a multi-passionate entrepreneur and creative, I have, for example, a lot of big ideas that come up in any given day. Most entrepreneurs, most high achievers, I feel like, have these great ideas that come
Right.
up in any given day. That if you drop everything and go over to that shiny object, let's call it, would be pretty devastating to your focus, right? And so identifying both your incredible ideas, dropping them into your dump zone is what I call it. It can be really, really effective in terms of freeing up that creativity and that executive focus for getting what your goal was on that day done and having an important placeholder for future thoughts because it's documented now,
Hmm.
right? And that
Hmm.
just frees up your brain power. There's literally this autonomic nervous system loves habit. So the more you sort of like habitually feed it the things that it does, you're
Yep.
able to be more successful. Another area of that is distractions to avoid. This is so
It's a
between
big
the
one for
dump
people, isn't
zone
it?
that I just mentioned and distractions to avoid, those are my two favorite parts. Well, it changes every day, but
Hmm.
two of my favorite parts of these daily pages because when you consciously identify distractions that you're going to avoid,
Hmm.
like maybe one particular form of social media or
Sure.
one particular video that you
Yep.
tend to get involved with, or maybe picking up your phone hundreds of times a day. Whatever those are, when you consciously identify them, your brain, when you go to hit on that distraction on any given day, your brain says,
Yep.
wait, you told me
Right.
that you didn't want to do this anymore. And so
Right.
there's a little interception that takes place.
Yes.
And the more that you create that interception, you'd be dramatically surprised
Love
with
that.
how incredibly effective this can be.
That's
So,
right.
for
That's right.
example, I mean, I tend to avoid Facebook, for example, because it's
Okay.
a really dangerous place for me to go down to.
Sure.
So that's usually one that I will drop in there. And then also taking calls from people during my work hours, taking calls from friends who I know need me,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
But they also know that I'll give them like an hour of support when I should be doing something else. So the
Yeah.
people who might, like, for example, my best friend knows to double ring me if she truly, truly needs me. Other than that, she's just a
I love it.
distraction to avoid during the day. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So
No. I love it.
consciously making those little awarenesses
Yes.
can be super effective and just
Yes.
kind of giving your brain the space to rest so that
Yep.
it can do the things that it needs to do more effectively.
But I'm a big fan of the distractions to avoid because yes, you're labeling it up front, you're creating that awareness, you're and then of course, um, when it does appear, it's easier to identify and it puts you in a point. And not to say and let's be clear, it's not to say that yeah, you still have a choice to make whether or not you allow that distraction to interrupt or not. However, at least you're now aware and you've got that, okay, do I or don't I? And with the do I thing, you know what will come with that, right? And you know what the don't when you don't, you can be more you can focus on what you're focusing on. So I think that's a incredible practice or tool.
Thank you.
The,
Thank
the
you.
the the other thing that I think is and sort of incorporating the work that you do is productivity and focus. Did those come as a result of the work that you're doing in stress, or those things that you've added on, or how did that come to be?
That's a really good question. The answer to that is it's all been part of of my overall solution to not just survive, but to thrive. And
Hmm.
I had, uh, to take a step back in 2019, I had three head traumas, three concussions in one summer. And life, I had been doing pretty well.
Hmm.
My health conditions were manageable, stuff like this. And then the summer happened where I had multiple concussions and nobody knew why I kept having these concussions. I had to really fight for my own care for them to ultimately identify, because multiple doctors basically told me it was in my head, right?
Okay.
Like
Okay.
literally in my head, you're a mom, you've got these other health conditions. It's basically you're basically going crazy. Um, I went back to one hospital and was like, bring me in. If you track me for seizures for 5 days and nothing happens, I will go and get the psychological support that I need. I will go inpatient. I will do whatever needs to
Yep.
happen because I
Hmm.
knew something was seriously wrong. On the second day, I came to with a room of like 20 people. And they were like, "Is this what's been happening at home?" I'm like, "Yes." "And why are you all in here?" They're like, "Your heart's been stopped. Your heart just stopped for 20 seconds."
Oh,
Um, and then a few minutes later, same morning, came to again with like 20 people, and they're like, "Okay, this time your heart stopped for 16 seconds." The cardiologist came in, and he electrophysiologist guy, and he's
mm,
like, "Yeah, you can't leave here without a pacemaker. We actually can't
wow,
let you go home. It's a
wow,
liability."
right.
And so it turned out that my heart was stopping because of this autonomic nervous system
Oh, wow.
problem that I
Yep.
have. Um, and so going back to your question, over the years of both, regulating my symptoms, regulating my emotions, all of that, I also had to like very quite literally retrain my brain because I had three known concussions, but I mean, I had had hundreds, thousands of cardiac arrests where my
Right.
brain wasn't getting oxygen. And
Right.
so, there's a lot of stuff in there that I
Yep.
had to sort through. And so I guess your question was there something specific that led to the creation of this tool? That was your question, right, Oddly?
Well, the connection between productivity and focus, was that right? Did that come as a result of, and it sounds like it did.
It did. It did. And my goal was originally to survive, to be there for my children.
Sure.
And what it turned out to do was to give me a lot of joy, a lot of peace, but also productivity in a way that I didn't really imagine. I had hoped for focus and productivity, but I didn't think that this would give me I didn't realize quite how effective these tools would be for me. And, you know, um, now I work with people of all sorts of disabilities as well as high level executives. So these tools can be used for a broad range of people to regulate that productivity and that balance. And one of the things, for example, one of the things in the stress less blueprint is identifying today's win. So, do you go back, Oddly, at the end of the day and identify one or two wins?
Aaron, I got to tell you, this topic is something near and dear. We talk about this lots on this podcast about the benefits of just celebrating, small successes, if you will, because of the incredible power they have from a motivation standpoint. I think there's much to be said about giving ourselves credit for our past successes, and if you think about it for a second, how often I think everyone does this, right? Well, you'll go through something, you'll overcome it, you'll get to the other side, and you'll move on and not think about or give yourself credit for the work that you've done. You just accept it. Well, yeah, that's part of life. And, I'm being resilient, great, but you still need to be able, if you articulate, identify, here's what I did. I'm proud of you. Great job. That kind of a thing. Because there is power in
Right.
that.
I think there's a lot of power in that. And,
Hmm.
sometimes, and we're all victim to this and to some extent, but
Yep.
sometimes life interferes. We don't
Sure.
get what we wanted to get done on any given day for whatever reason, or at least we don't think that we wanted to get what we had hoped to get done. And on days like that, eating lunch or eating breakfast is a win,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
and acknowledging that, like, let's say, I mean, sometimes even getting dressed
Yeah.
is for real a win. Going for a walk,
Yeah.
basic level stuff. So meet yourself wherever that you're at and
Nice.
celebrate those wins without hesitation because again, your brain likes those rewards. Your
Yeah.
brain does better knowing that you've sort of given it a pat on the back, so to speak. Now that doesn't say that you can't improve because I do also believe in improvement. So at the same time that at the end of the day, you'll say, here were my big wins, identifying an area to improve. Like, for example, tomorrow you might do an hour with no phone and
Right.
time the session. Do a
Yep.
time session focused on email strategy or something like this. So consciously identifying ways that you'll improve, again, sort of like keep you more likely to be
Yeah.
in that executive sort of flow state.
Yeah, yeah. I know you've definitely touched on a good one here because we do something we've touched on many instances, and so I want to thank you for raising that very, very important point for our listeners again. But thank you for doing so. Certainly, very, very insightful, Erin, in terms of just the approach to stress and really our stress response, and so really appreciate those insights. Where can listeners access the Stress Less Blueprint?
So if you just go to stresslessblueprint.com,
Okay.
you'll access that download. And you can also learn more about me at soulvalues.com, all one word, soulvalues.com. But the download, the 4 or 5 page download that sort of gives you the system and helps you understand how you can use this on a daily basis, that's right over at stresslessblueprint.com.
Beautiful. And as well, your book, The Whole Life Planner, is something you'll be able to access to your website as well.
Yep, you can get that on my website. It's also available on Amazon.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Again, I love the fact that I know we talked about burnouts off the top, but I think that's a really important one. We don't want people to get there, right? And so there's things that we can do, even things we do from an awareness standpoint to help raise people's level of awareness, understand when they're going down that path. I think that's a win. And so I want to thank you for doing that. Congratulations on your personal work to get you where you are now. And again, I just love the fact that you're using your own experiences to help inform your work to turn around and help others, which is just a beautiful, beautiful thing. And then lastly, just the emphasis on being able to find time for the important things. We take a lot for granted sometimes in our busy lives, and I think that's a really good indicator. If you find that you can't find time for the important things, you may have a problem. So thank you so much for all the insights, Erin.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. I appreciate it.
Back we are here on the podcast, and much thanks and appreciation goes out to Erin for being here. You know, in our conversation, Erin drew on her personal journey illustrating the importance of managing stress for sustainable success. We dive deep into the key indicators of burnout that many of us might overlook, and Erin offered actionable insights and strategies that we can all implement. You know, one of the things I love personally about this interview is that Erin's authentic approach, you know, her insights were not only based on research, but her lived experiences, making them relatable as well as practical. I encourage you to connect with Erin directly. Her contact details, of course, are in the show notes below. Additionally, she has a fantastic special offer for listeners, so be sure to check out the Stress Less Blueprint, available at stresslessblueprint.com, which provides tools to help you manage stress effectively. Now, as we wrap up this episode of the Audacious Living Podcast, I want to thank you for joining me here in Cozumel. I hope you found Erin's insights valuable and that they inspire you to take action in your own life. Remember, living audaciously means prioritizing your well-being and finding balance amidst the chaos. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, follow, or share the podcast to help us grow and reach even more listeners. Together, we can continue to power each other to live our best audacious lives. Until next time, stay safe, be kind, show love to one another, and be audacious.
You've been listening to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by Audley Stevenson. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, be audacious.